What's up guys, Larry here from AmmoNYC.com. So a few weeks ago for our episode on rim repair, we visited George at Proformance Industries. As we saw in that episode, George is a true metallurgist, an expert at bending and reshaping metal. On today's episode, we're going to be partnering again with George to show you what really happens in the elusive skill of PDR, or paintless dent removal. That's all coming up on this episode of Drive Clean right here on the Drive Network. All right, George, so my car has a lot of dings in it, and I've always wanted to know what is actually going on during the PDR process.
Imagine this is the hood of your car. Impact comes in. You see what just happened? This pillow
these
folded.
sides popped up here.
Exactly. So to the naked eye, it just looks like a low spot. But really what's happening is you're impacting the metal. The sides of it are crowning up. So to fix this properly, what we need to do, we don't want to stretch this metal, so we need to bring this down a little, bring this up a little bit, down, up.
Because in reality, I almost think, I always thought you guys were just popping it up from,
No.
You're really focusing on the outer edges of the actual impact. Does that make sense?
Exactly. And that understanding is the major difference between the really top-notch PDR technician and the average PDR technician. The average PDR technician is pushing out, trying to force this out, and the really savvy, experienced PDR technician understands this concept and fixes these dents totally undetectable. Some guys fix them, they look pretty good, but they're still not perfect.
So if this went in and you just focused on pulling that out without doing these, what does it look like afterwards? Is it just like wavy or?
What would happen is you would need tremendous force to get this center section out beyond this outside, and you would end up stretching it and leaving these little tiny poke marks.
Yeah, I've seen that before.
Yeah, so we want to manipulate this metal and never really push with more force than the texture of the orange peel. So if we do push, we want to make these little movements. But with that amount of force I'm describing, you'd never get this out without relieving the stress around the outside.
Gotcha.
So it's important to understand this concept before we tackle this dent. Traditional auto body repair is done on a feel basis. PDR is done on a visual basis. So we need to create a reference point. Now, the props that you see boards similar to this are no different than the fluorescent light fixture on your ceiling. Anything that you can drag your eye across that's fixed, that we can judge the contour of this panel and see its irregularities, would be a good reference point. That light fixture, actually, I'm looking at the reflection of that light fixture and I see every crevice and contour and shape of this dent perfectly. However, my reference point, I need to be able to move it at different angles because I can fix this dent according to that reference point. But then when I look from your
I can't see what you're seeing right now.
From your side at different degrees. So this dent, I need to be able to fix it 360 degrees from every angle. Once we get to that point where we think we fixed it perfectly, we can go from another angle and check and verify. But this is for us to see the tip of the tool underneath this panel. As we're dragging, the tool needs to drag across this. If we didn't, we wouldn't be able to gauge where we were on the backside of this panel.
So without this board, you would say, how ineffective is it to remove a dent? Like almost impossible.
Without a good reference point, I'd be probably as effective as you. You know? No offense. So my 20 years experience in this would be, without this board set up properly, without a good reference point, I'm useless. I'd be guessing where the tip of this tool is.
Gotcha.
I'm trying to explain as best I can the most effective way to set up a reference point. So this being our reference point, and imagine this was the dent on your hood. Imagine there's all sheet metal around here. This is
blown
just
up dent,
blown up dent. Well, if I had this reference point, can you see, I want you to look into this panel, because it's very important when we're fixing these dents that you see the full contour and the shape of the dent at all times. Could you see?
From right here, I can't see the middle of the dent.
Right, so we need that reference point in the beginning stages of repairing this dent. We need it. Now, if you looked in that dent, you could see that reflection.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
So that's very important.
I can see this. Yeah.
That's very important when we start fixing a dent, and we want to be able to see the tip of our tool in that dent.
It's from the back side of this, feeling around the metal.
Exactly, because it's very easy to see the tip of the tool. I could teach you in a couple minutes to see the tip of the tool on a flat panel, and you can see, track it where it's going. Oh, it's going to be pretty easy. But when we have a dent, the material is not flexible anymore like straight sheet metal, so it gets some rigidity. So we need to know exactly where we are when we get to the edge of this panel, and then with a real focused eye, see that tip of that tool. Train our eye to see that in the dent. It's very important that we see all these pressure points, because this dent now, contrary to what people may believe, to fix a dent like this, we will make a push here. We'll make a push here. We'll make a push here. We're here, 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 here. So just this region here, we might have had, this is real world. This just little section right here.
You would have pushed from behind, you mean?
I would have pushed from behind.
Little push.
First at the lowest point and softening the dent. When I've softened this center section, the deepest point of this dent, I'll go back to my reference point from a sharp angle and maybe do the same process on the outside of those crowns that bulged up that I showed you before.
They would be
in the pillow.
here, in theory?
Out here, I would go and press down and knock down those crowns. The best repairs are where the surface area is consistent. We brought this down, we brought this out, we didn't stretch anything. Let's do it. The first thing we're going to do is just mark off this area. You got that dent right there, so I'm going to circle this so you can keep an eye on the center of that. There's your dent. So when we're doing paintless dent removal, leverage is very important, enabling us to have good control of the tool. So we want to create a pivot point somewhere close to the dent and work off of that pivot point. So what I'm going to do here is just put this old block of wood here and then get like a piece of wire, maybe tie it off here, and I use the vinyl coated wire, like electrical wire, because if you miss and you hit this car, at least it's got a vinyl coating, we're not going to scratch up the car. So I'm going to tie this off.
So now this, oh yeah.
Well, it's movable, but just gauging my leverage, I think it's pretty darn good. I'm going to move this over. Now I'm going to set up my reference point. So. Okay. So I feel pretty comfortable with that positioning, but I'm going to, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, but what I'm going to do right now is drag the tip of my tool this way on this panel across this reference point. So I'm looking at the reflection of this dent on the edge of the yellow and the black line.
How do you know where your point is?
I'm going to drag it across, and the line, when I drag across this line, will distort. It'll show me exactly where I am. I mean, that's close to 20 pushes already for that little dent. I used a very blunt tool. If I used a sharper tool, we could have got away with, but I wanted you to see exactly how the metal reacts. And this was an extreme case because this has a sound detonating on the backside.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Which blunts, and this is a very blunt tip. So what happened is, I can't make a sharp pinpoint push in the center of that dent. So I brought up this whole area, but now you can see clearly what I was explaining to you. If you look, you see a crown with a little pit in the middle.
Yep. It does look like a volcano.
Right. So for me to get that little pit out right now, I would need to continue to stretch, but I stopped because I recognized that crown. I said, whoa, let me knock down that crown, soften it again, and bring out the center again. So that's what we're going to do. So it almost looks like I put the dent back in. It's just a very smaller version of the original dent. What happened was I just softened this dent. So from this little sharp dent, I brought it out. Now I just have a shallower, softer dent. All right, so now I'll go back in there. That's 5 pushes already for that little thing. At this reference point, I'm pretty comfortable where we are so far. We need to knock down a little bit more. All right, for this last step, Larry, because this car has been repainted and there is a little impression in the paint, we're going to wet sand it. I just got a little 2000 grit wet sandpaper with a little rubber squeegee. And if there was a chip in this paint, this would be a great time to touch this up. There are literally these tiny little shiny spots where the sand hit the paint, flattened it. This car would really do well with a nice wet sand and polish to take out all that stuff because it didn't go through. So here I go in a little different direction now. Once again, no pressure.
Depending if your paint is hard or soft, you may need to finish your wet sanding at 2500 or even 3000 grit instead of the 2000 shown here.
The squeegee does a really nice job of removing all the water. And this process, what it does is, see those little tiny spots? Little tiny shiny spots? Those are, I didn't sand far enough. So this is a real great guide. But you can see that little impression that we had in the paint. Visually, we saw it. I made a little tiny poke mark. All I did was manipulate the existing material that was there. So if this was a 3 mil thickness of primer, paint, and clear coat, all we did was kind of distorted that material to give us enough room to sand it flush and repolish it because the dent was fixed. We've addressed this issue. We don't see any shiny spots, which would be a low spot. It's consistently sanded, smooth. This dent is ready for polishing.
Afterwards, I followed up the wet sanding with 2500 grit to allow the Roops polisher and the microfiber cutting pad to easily repair the sanding marks. I'm using the Roops polisher on speed 6, medium to heavy pressure, along with leveling fluid in a crisscross pattern. Remember, most body shops will use a rotary polisher along with a wool pad for its speed and cutting power, and there's nothing wrong with that. But because this Porsche is black, and of course, I'm the lucky owner, I don't mind spending an extra minute or two to avoid potential burn-through or swirl marks. As you can see, the dent was removed by manipulating the metal from below and the top side, allowing it to slowly bend back into a smooth, flat surface, saving me from a costly body shop visit. Paintless dent removal requires a sharp eye, steady hand, and an incredible amount of knowledge surrounding the properties of metal and how to manipulate or bend it without causing more damage. As long as cars have doors, doors will most definitely have dings, and thankfully, PDR technicians will magically make them disappear with just a few hundred small pushes in the exact right spot. George is a metallurgy master. The before and after on my hood is just incredible. There's literally no evidence of any dings. For a PDF download of our recommended tips for finding high-quality paint dent removal technicians, visit ammonyc.com. And thanks again for watching another episode of Drive Clean.
You go nuts. I love this. We don't want to go too far. That's why I'm being so careful. Because we have no real, very tight access from the backside to...
Oh, we go back and push it up.